So here's the thing. One of the cool thing, if you have smart people in the room, then you can put me as well and have a conversation between those people. So I will try to moderate this one. And the people you may already know. So Patricia, you already seen Patricia.
I'm fighting the urge to do this.
Right, so head of learning in Scrum.org. We have Simon on my left. All of you are on my left, by the way. So you're so smart on this one. So researcher and strategist and inventor of Wardley mapping. It's pretty cool because you remember the tool you're using. Right. So the name is really important.
Very, very helpful. I'm terrible at naming things. So 20 years ago when I started mapping out economic, technological, political, cultural systems, somebody asked me, what's this called? And I had no idea. And eventually, after much badgering, I said, oh, we'll just call it a Wardley map. And that stuck. I thought I was the only person in the world who was going to be using it, but it turned out a few others. Oh, fantastic. Look at that. Isn't that marvelous?
Yeah, I was wondering what they're going to
Can I ask a question?
All right. But first, I need to introduce the third panelist, which is James Hartley, head of BMO and IA, so it's kind of AI, I believe, in Toyota Motor Europe. All right, and the things we want to talk about is like, the question we want to ask is like innovation in Agile. So how much innovation there is in Agile? Is there like a new ideas coming in, or we just repeat the same over and over again? And the kind of warming question to you is what kind of favorite color you have? No, just kidding. So the thing is like innovation and Agile, they have already, well, the words are being used in so many contexts that they can be understood differently. So the very first warming up question is, if you hear innovation in Agile, what does it mean? I don't know who we should, maybe with ladies we should start, I believe.
Okay. So I find this interesting, and maybe it's just my personal, oh God, this is being recorded. My personal...
we can cut this off later, fine. That's okay.
It's no, it's just, I actually think I feel a bit jaded. So I don't know. I don't think I really, I don't know if the two words don't mean anything together. I don't know if they ever did. I mean, agility in the way that we would inspect and adapt, we're learning new things, but there's always been the debate of chasing innovation. I don't think innovation just goes boop. You know, I've worked at a lot of startups and you're trying to create something, but this notion of agile and innovation, I think I'm a bit jaded. I don't think it's anything shiny or new, because I think of agility as a mindset and a set of principles. And I think of a lot of it, the industry has been corrupted by buzzword bingo and by people trying to do stuff because it was such an innovative space. But I would say I'm a little jaded, I think.
All right. Jens,
sorry.
We're good. Jens, can you take over?
Yeah, I can absolutely see why you would say that. The first thing I would challenge is whether innovation and agile really need to be coupled together in such a way as you've put in the sentence, honestly. Innovation existed before agile. Innovation will exist in other forms as well. I fully buy into the buzzword bingo point, and I think we're all a bit jaded by this. I think that's probably a very good word to use. Very honestly, I think agile has kind of gone from being sexy and cool to mainstream, with everybody is kind of using this because it's a better way to reach our customers. It's a better way to give value towards our customers. The fact of whether it delivers innovation or not shouldn't be how it's measured, actually. What should be measured is the value that it's delivering. If you can deliver innovation as part of that, great. But there are tons of ways to look at things in a new, innovative way. As Patricia's just mentioned, actually, startups are there doing exactly this. So I would question whether we really need to couple the two words together in the first place, honestly.
All right. Simon.
Gosh, there's an awful lot to unpack here. First of all, I'm not a big fan of the word innovation. And the reason being is that when I look at systems, you get value chains of systems or supply chains if we're talking cross companies or an industry. And all of those components are evolving. So we start off with the genesis of novel and new, custom-built examples, products and rental services, commodity and utility services. So what's the problem with the word innovation? Every novel and new thing we create, we call an innovation. Every custom-built example, we call an innovation. Every feature differentiation to a product, we call an innovation. Every product-to-utility business model, we call an innovation. Those are completely different methods, completely different techniques, and yet we use the same word over and over again. So it's a bit like calling everything cheese. You just lose any granularity or understanding of the space. So I'm not a big fan of the word innovation at all. Next, we get to the agile, which you pointed to as well. There is an issue between there's agile, the method, and agile as in agility in an organization. So when you think about agility of an organization, this goes all the way back to Salomon Story's innovation paradox, the need to both create the novel and new and be efficient at the same time. What you find with any large, complicated system, you need to use multiple methods at the same time. So we might use extreme programming in one place, we might use Scrum in another, we might be using methods more like Six Sigma in a different place. So the application of appropriate methods is what gives us agility, whereas agile is just one method in terms of extreme programming. And the problem you get is when you apply a single method across the entire context, it's always ineffective. I've been having this fight for 20 years, and I used to be the chaos monkey for the Scrum lot, the safe lot, and I used to point out it applies to a specific context only. But of course, everybody tries to do their one-size-fits-all, Six Sigma everywhere, extreme programming everywhere. It doesn't work. You've got to learn to use appropriate methods according to the context, and so that means using multiple methods at the same time. So I'm not a fan of the word innovation. I have to agree with you here strongly. It's a terrible word. I think you need to make a distinction between the method and agility. They are not the same thing. Agility requires more appropriate methods being applied, whereas the method of agile, extremely important, but it applies in one context. Now you've got this slight other problem, is that methods evolve as well. So agile as an extreme programming has gone from a concept back 20 years ago when we started to first adopt it, through basically emerging, converging methodology. So it's now become a really good method for coping with spaces where deviation is the norm or change is the norm. You're going to get a lot of change to a system, whereas Six Sigma has evolved to an accepted method for dealing with areas you don't want deviation. And both of those occur in any one system at the same time.
All right, so what I'm hearing is like every new shampoo is not always innovation, right? Every new shampoo is not always innovation. Just making sure.
I'm one of these days. I'm going to start selling, boxes of innovation. You can buy, cereal boxes of innovation.
And for all of you here, you can get 10% discount.
And we're assuming kind of the same flavor when we're talking about innovation, because when I was looking at my phone, my friend's company, they just bought another company because the CIO said he wants to work on his innovation strategy. Right?
In a box.
So that for him was the innovation.
That's
why I'm jaded.
You should be. Most organizations, sad to say, are dominated by stories. In fact, we tell... so I teach at a couple of different business schools. We teach people that great leaders are great storytellers. And this creates a problem, because what happens when you challenge somebody's story, you're actually challenging their leadership ability. So the whole organization starts to focus around the power of the story. And that story comes from, as you say, a CEO saying, oh, I've read this article. We should be AI or whatever, because other people are AI. It's a bit like generals going around saying, I've just read General Weekly. Apparently, 67% of other generals are bombing hills. We should find a hill and bomb it. That is the level of strategy we have in most organizations. It's terrifying. You've got good right to be jaded.
I hope you guys are making notes about this bombing. All right. So, by the way, so one of the things we get the Wardley map is already 15 years on the market, I believe. Scrum is 30-ish years. Toyota production system is it's known on the market for 40-ish, and it's on the market for 70-ish. So yeah, more plus. So maybe before we get to how much innovation we have, despite we cannot define the innovation. Anyway, let's start with one thing we should forget completely from this agile world. So idea that maybe was a great idea 20 years ago, we just should forget it. So the one idea we carry over from one component to another, and we just should
TPS
stop.
reports.
Just one.
I'm thinking.
You're talking about in the context of agile. One thing we should
well, we can go broader. So if you go into the lean, then we have exactly the same. We just copy paste, and we have the same problems with copying a lean. So I'm fine with agile, lean, anything. Up to you.
So I wouldn't necessarily directly rule out anything at this point, because I believe that everything that you are doing, whatever you are building, whatever you're trying to achieve, has a certain kind of constellation of things that you need to apply to it. If you want to visualize your metrics, you need some type of burn down. Maybe you need a TPS report. See what I did there? So you can't necessarily, but if it's not important that you're measuring and you want to, Simon will love me for using the word innovate now. If you want to innovate with something, then maybe the metrics isn't the thing that you're after. So I would want to be more specific before answering the question, honestly.
You want me to be more specific?
No, but I don't think you can, because you're asking a generic and general question.
Yeah, that's how we run panel, I believe.
Well, I'll answer. The one thing I would like us to see demolish is the idea of one size fits all. That's the one thing. We constantly get into this habit of having, and SAFE was an example of this. I'd like us to get to the point of understanding of the context and the landscape and realizing that different methods apply.
It's difficult because as the resident methodologist in the company, right? People come and they say, oh, when are you guys going to update the Scrum Guide? And what are you going to change? And so they'll do things like, oh, I think we should remove the Scrum values, remove this, remove that. And I think it's what Simon was saying. It's in the context of what is useful. If Scrum is useful for you and those things are useful, then use it. If it doesn't work, don't use it and see if it helps you or not. So I think that's interesting. But there's always this discussion of trying to make it one size fits all of what we should have or what we should do, rather than just try and ask for forgiveness later. But it's in terms of getting rid of something from 20 years ago, there was a recent discussion that my professional colleague, a close friend, and I were having in regards to this notion of the Scrum values, because it can make it real for some people. And I touched on it this morning, where he we were talking about focus, openness, courage, commitment, respect. And courage, I think, was really interesting, because he was saying, when you come from a situation where you can drive your opinion home at the table, that's fine. And if somebody doesn't, because maybe they're a single mother, they're working, they don't want to lose their job, but they want to be a team member, by doing that, are we hindering some people? So it was like a philosophical discussion, but it was quite an interesting one.
I'd like to add something to this, because this is a fantastic point. I actually started mapping 20 years ago, by the way. So one of the things about doing...
I checked Wikipedia and was saying 2010. So
well, don't trust what's in Wikipedia. There we are. So, so one of the things about mapping is when you map, you start to learn patterns. And there's three basic forms of patterns, what we call climatic patterns. These are economic rules of the game. There's like 30 of those. Strategic gameplays, about 150 of those. And there's 40 what we call doctrine. These are principles. Now, these principles aren't the same as values and beliefs. Values and beliefs are things, we believe in, whereas principles are ways of operating. So they're closely aligned, but somewhat different. And interestingly, off those 40, there are a whole bunch I think we should keep. This sounds really daft because, saying this 20 years ago, people would look at me like I was telling them to do test-driven development, which they also thought was daft. So things like, for example, know your users, focus on user needs, understand the components in the value chain, understand the details of those components. That's like 4 really basic ones. Or number 5, use appropriate methods. So there's some really simple principles which I think we should use because they turn out to be quite universally useful. And then we can get into the whole space of beliefs and values, which are really important as well. So there are certain things I'd like us to keep. Just one thing I really want us to ditch is this one-size-fits-all.
All right, so 5 principles. I hope they're going to be on tomorrow keynote because I didn't make notes now. So I hope you were going to share them tomorrow.
Because of the conversations I've had, I'm going to change tomorrow's keynote a little bit. I'm going to get into AI, values and beliefs by mapping out cultural systems. And I'm going to take us down into sovereignty as well, because there's some... I used to work for Wedel in Warsaw 30 years ago, and there's some things I want to talk about.
All right, we're going to touch on AI because that's mandatory for any conference. But before we get there, so let's talk about, because you mentioned TDD, and this is one of the great things we had when it's never worked out on scale. So let's talk about one idea you've seen, again, agile, lean, whatever word, that never get enough traction. So
what has
so an idea you saw that was great, but never get enough attention in our
delivery?
world.
MVP, I would go with. I think it's the most misused, misunderstood principle of Agile. At least in the world that I live in, MVP is everything I need. And then we will have an MVP 2 and an MVP 3. And to be honest, this is one of the most frustrating things as an Agilist who understands what MVP is about, trying to explain to people that, no, you do not need all of these features in order to go live.
Have you ever experienced the opposite?
Never. In my experience, never, no. Have you, actually? Because this sounds like an amazing place.
I know I fought against that. Like, no, but I understand where you're coming from. It's like, everything just in case, and then we'll figure it out later. We'll strip it back. But I just wanted to see because you were so passionate about the 1, the 2, and the 3. I'm sorry, Tomek, what was your question?
Yes. Thanks for asking. So one thing that is a great idea, but it never get enough attention from the crowd. So something like people making the notes, some people making the notes. I hope we don't don't see you. So if they're making a note, something they should look at after the panel.
I don't think this is the fault of anybody, but the I teach at some business schools in the U.S. and they always go, "Is this self-management thing real?" And I'm really not sure it is based on what we see in companies. So I think that's a thing that's totally. I think honestly, delivery MVP, we are focused very much on how people feel, but there's a purpose to that. And I think that sometimes that gets a little lost because you can have really happy employees and nothing else.
Gosh.
You want a different question?
No.
I like to softball them too.
Yeah. Test-driven development. There's just something I've got to say about test-driven development. Because, gosh, it was... where are we now? It was, 16, 17 years ago, whatever, when we started with these concepts, people were very sort of like but we write the code and then we test afterwards. I come from a physical engineering background. And in the world of physical engineering, we build tools for the job. So I like making soups. So I use a kitchen blender at home to make soup. If I'm building a deep mine shaft, I don't use a kitchen blender. Okay, and what I do is I use mining tools to build a deep mine shaft, not a kitchen blender. And if somebody says, oh, but you could use robots with kitchen blenders, that would be so much better. No, deep mining shaft requires mining tools. There's only one engineering subject that I know of where we don't design tools for the job, and that is software engineering. For some reason, in the world of software engineering, we try to use standardized tools rather than building our tools. Now, there's only one section of software engineering which does the right thing, actually follows an engineering discipline, and that's test-driven development. Because those tests are small tools, and we build a test suite for the actual problem itself. So when I build a test suite for an electronic healthcare record system, it's different if I'm doing an online gambling site, because of the tools, the test suite is contextual. So software development is a craft, not an engineering subject, and the only part of engineering in software engineering is in fact the testing. And we got stuck into this because of tool vendors who sell us the same tools which we try and use in different places, and they discourage us from building tools because they tell us building tools is hard. So the one thing desperately we need to keep is test-driven development, and I would say that development itself has got to stop being a craft and learn to be an engineering subject, and that starts by building tools for the job.
Yeah, I was waiting for this one. Thank you. All right, so the fancy topic of AI, this is the moment I believe I need to ask this question anyway. I'm sorry that there are some marketing rules of good conversation on the panel. So okay, so this AI thing, how does it impact both agile and our agility and innovation, despite we cannot define those both words?
Who to?
I don't know. That was a tough question.
Go, Simon. I know you want to start.
All right.
Well, first of all, when you map out the AI field, it is a field. It's not one thing. So there's many, many different components within that, some of which are particularly useful. Unfortunately, we've got into this habit of using AI to basically mean GPTs or large language models. So I presume that's what we're talking about, the use of co-pilots, etc., to build code. The one thing I would like you all to remember is that these AI systems are coherence engines. They are not truth engines. They are designed to give you a coherent argument. They're not grounded in truth. There's no real understanding to the systems. So when you use them, it's a good idea, first of all, to understand the landscape of what you're building and make decisions of where human decision-making is actually important in that landscape. And that changes depending upon the context of what you're doing. And I'll go through some of this tomorrow. So I do a lot of vibe coding, and that is basically using a Copilot large language model to write my code without ever looking at the code. And it's dangerous. It's fraught with danger. I've done about 700 hours of this, and the horror stories I can tell you. I mean, I had one system, I got an agentic swarm to build me a testing engine. So while I was writing the code, it was writing the test. While it was writing the code, it was also writing the tests. And I was like really pleased. This is going really well. I'd give prompts. It'd write new functionality, write a test, it would run the testing suite, I would see it succeeded or failed, copy the logs. I was like, amazing. About 6 hours in, I started to become suspicious. And so I broke the rule of vibe coding. I looked at the code. And what the system had built me was not a testing engine, but a simulation of a testing engine. So every test was the probability of failure of this function, and if it did fail, what's the likely error message going to be? So it never actually tested the system at all. It just completely simulated it. There are lots and lots of traps in this space. From which all stem from the fact that these are nothing more than stochastic parrots. They are coherence engines. They are not truth engines. So very useful, but also extremely dangerous. Be careful.
I agree. And I think something that it made me think about, just kind of listening and thinking about the question, is that at least in the US around 2007, 2008, and I was listening to someone speak about this, where they said at that time, young people were told, if you just study coding, if you study computer science, you're going to be set. You're going to have a good job. It's going to be exciting. You're going to be able to do these things. So everybody said, okay, let's go to school for that. And there's a lot of push from the big companies. And lo and behold, things are happening, but those people aren't able to get jobs. But they were told that they would be able to get jobs. It was, the new way. It'd be like not being able to read if you didn't know how to code. And now they're saying, oh, don't worry, you just need to learn AI from an education standpoint. And the thing is that technology outpaces what's going on in university, just like other different topics, but it outpaces it. And there is a lot of money going into the system saying, just learn AI. The conversations we have now will not be the same ones we're having next year. And so just another aspect of risk of what's happening is we have, again, a lot of young people, a lot of professionals, maybe some people in the room. We all need to learn AI right now. And when they invest in it and then they come back out in 2 years or 3 years, it's not going to be marketable, I would say. Yeah. So that's another thing just to think about as we hone in on these conversations about what is truly valuable.
Do you mind? So, does anybody remember the early cloud days, circa 2006 to 2010? So back then, we used to get all these articles written by analysts saying that the sysadmin is dead. Your job is over. We will never need you. Okay? Loads. Completely missing the concept of Jevons paradox. So Jevons paradox comes from the coal question, written in 1865. And what happens is they made steam engines more efficient. And because they made steam engines more efficient, everybody thought, we'll use less coal. What happened is coal exploded because we made steam engines more efficient. We found new ways of using steam engines. It created new industries. And so exactly the same happened circa 2006 to 2010. You get these CIOs running around saying, we're getting rid of our sysadmins, we don't need them. Our physical server base went from 2,000 for a reasonable size enterprise, physical servers, to about 50,000. So 25 times more complexity because we're now competing against others in this virtual world. And so the estate expands just to keep up. And so what happened is they hired all the sysadmins back, but they gave them new names. They called them DevOps engineers. Do you remember that? Right, Klarna, we do not need software engineers anymore. That was 2 years ago. Okay, we're getting rid of them all. By the way, they are hiring software engineers like nobody's business at this moment, because our estates are going to go from 30 million lines of code to about 1 billion lines of code with this vibe coding stuff. And someone has got to manage that, to analyze that, to work out where those right decisions are. So yes, it's the end of software engineers. We're just going to call you agentic herders or AI wranglers or some other title, but you'll be doing the same job but using AI to do it.
But the loop will be, they will be software engineers again in 5 years' time.
Yeah, we just won't call them software engineers. It'd be like...
I very much subscribe, and I was going to say something very similar to what Simon has just said, actually. For me, the most important person when using AI is the human. Unless you have a human in the loop, you are risking... I mean, let's put it this way. I'm in the automotive industry. We create software for our cars. We push it over the air to your car, maybe while you're driving, and it doesn't work. Then what happens? And you all know whose fault that's going to be, and it's not going to be yours. The risk inherently built into using AI blindly is huge. And actually, for me, senior software engineers, tech leads, their job has just, with the complexity that Simon has just explained, has just become massively more complex and more challenging, but more important to every organization. And I think honestly, my worry, going back to students that are learning today, is we had a trade, we had a pipeline of people learning how to do development, peer programming, test-driven development. We had a process behind all of this. If our junior devs today are learning to code with AI, they will never become senior devs. And then all of you senior devs in the audience, you're going to be able to take home the pay packet that you want because we won't have anybody else to ask.
Yeah, well, so one comment here. One of the pain we see on Polish market, I don't know how about the other markets, is like it's super hard to find a job as a junior because, you know, most of the assumption is like AI will do the job for you, right? You were going to add something?
No, well, yes, I'm wondering, just kind of curious, is there, just based off of obviously the decision making, is there anyone that it's not obvious to, the need to validate, verify, human?
I unfortunately spend time with CIOs who have been sold into this world that they can get rid of all their software engineers because AI will magically do it for them. They can point a large language model at their legacy estate and it will transform it into something shiny and new. It's utter garbage. I mean, it really is horrendous garbage. I mean, I work with some of the most complex sort of legacy environments. The first thing we do is build tools to describe the architecture, because the architecture's in the code, not in the nice little diagrams we draw. And then we basically point a large language model at it, and at best, it gets 60 to 80% right. And people think that's fantastic. No, that means 20, 40% is wrong. And you don't know which 20 to 40%. That's the problem. So at the moment, we are nowhere close to this, but there are people genuinely in these positions running around. They've been sold this story and they believe we can get rid of software engineers.
That's good enough. There's your MVP.
Well, my VP thinks about this as well, actually, and it is being sold. I think actually the new rhetoric is we'll create agentic solutions. So an agent talking to another agent, talking to another agent. Yeah, that's going to obviously solve all of your problems. When all of them have an error ratio of 20%, you start to see the problem.
So we get the wrong answer, but at least it's cheap, right? Because we fire all the people.
Just make sure you've got good lawyers, is all I will say.
And now you can use AI instead of lawyers. It's also cheaper.
Well, we've had people, you know, using large language models to create diets ending up in hospitals. I mean, we've had large language model induced suicides, hospitalizations. I mean, people are using this stuff for policy and not realizing that these systems don't understand. They're not truth engines. They're just coherence. They're designed to be helpful, and helpful, unfortunately for humans, means being confident with the answer, and which is what they're good at, giving you a confident answer to your problem. It may be completely and utterly wrong, and that's why you need an expert to look at it, but it will give you a confident answer.
Just to balance this, I think we all see that AI has value. We're not saying that AI has no value. What we're saying is take caution, handle with care, basically.
Okay, so it led me to two questions, basically, are the same. Two sides of one coin. It's basically because you have two options. Right now, either you have a company which is trying to do everything with AI, so like firing everybody and hopefully AI will do everything. And their second option is like AI is too dangerous for us, so it's not safe, so we're not going to do anything with AI. Not sure which one to start with, but let's start with the first one. So you get when you have a situation when, you know, company is trying to do everything with AI, what will be your recommendation, advice, suggestion, anything?
Leave.
I mean, the model that we've always said is it's like, well, I don't know if this is derogatory, but it's like an intern. You check and validate, you know? They're very eager, you're going to get what you want, but you need to validate. And you know, I think that using for whatever, let's just say content development, even it's making sure that you're still able to maintain the skills that you have, whether that be coding, writing. It's structuring of thought that I've seen go away with use of it. But you know, intern.
I agree with your logic, and actually it's the job that the people are doing, the impact is going to be low if it's wrong, basically. It's going to be recoverable, it's manageable, it's not going to have...
Yes, I don't want to be in your car, the one that you're saying, the 60%.
Strangely, we don't let interns write code on our cars. But
Can you just let us know when you just decide to go this direction?
I think you should look at other car brands.
But cars, you know, like there's study, I was talking to a wonderful woman, there's a lot that's happening in medicine, right? Studying dementia, studying the eyes, studying the brain. There's so many wonderful things that it can do in terms of recognizing patterns.
So from the point of view of the company which is saying we're going to adopt it all, first of all, you don't have any choice about whether to adopt it over the long term. This is not a question of if, it's a question of when. But when you do, it's a question of how and where do you use it. So where does human decision making, is it important? So when I look at things like large language models, there's two areas I find them fantastic at, and I use them all the time at, which is one, coming up with hypotheses. Because they hallucinate like nobody's business. And that's really useful. They come up with crazy ideas to test. Fantastic. The second is they're really good at helping me build tools. So I use the tools to find the answer, not the large language model. So I find them in the decision-making process, large language models, to be really good at that. And also, if I look at the entire context of the system, there will be bits I can prototype, so I can do vibe coding, other parts which is more software engineering or software coding plus AI, other bits which I might use agentic systems for, and other bits which I'm just outsourcing to somebody else anyway. So there are different places that we can use them, and that profile will change over time. So it's not a question of go all in or refuse. It's always a bit of both. But understand your environment, work out where it's applicable in your environment, consider where humans actually matter, and use them for what they're good at, like hypothesis and tool building, not for giving you answers.
Just to keep on that, but on the other end, we have seen, I don't know if either of you have seen, some companies that are putting in AI as a role in their hierarchy. Yeah, which is really interesting about accountability.
So I wrote a post in I think it was about 2013, 2014, about the use of AIs and replacing roles. The ideal role is the CEO. And so there was a wonderful example of a company in China who's actually replaced their CEO with a large language model. Because this goes back to the work of Marcus Pfizer. So Marcus Pfizer evaluated the performance improvement of 4,000 CEOs and determined it was indistinguishable from random chance. So you could just replace them with anybody, and it would have no difference. So I think the idea of replacing your executive layer with large language models has actually got some legs to it.
Is it the moment when we switch to politics or not yet?
Well, we can get into values if you wish.
You want to add something to this?
I think Simon has very well balanced the other half of your question, by the way.
Yeah. So that was strategist approach to answer both questions, right? So you can go over.
I think for me, I'm very much in your position. It's about when and where. When I said about the impact, I think what we're trying to do within my company is look at where it can add value without causing a huge impact in along the line. As such, our R&D department are kind of keeping it at an arm's length and keeping away from it, whereas our websites are full of looking at new ways to try new things and do things in a different way. A/B testing, small pilot samples, and see what results we get back as a result.
So you've just reminded me of something. I think it was a couple of days ago. I think it was Deloitte, or one of the big management consultants, got fined $400,000 for using an AI to create their report. Yeah. There you are. There's an example of something you can do. Replace all your management consultants with large language models. Just get rid of them. Because
I believe there was some company, this consulting company, who just fired like a few thousand people of them. Like we're not sure which one was that, but like there was like something in the news that they just fired.
What, a management consultancy company fired whole because they're well, if they're going to replace it with large language models, you may as well just fire the company, not use them, and just use a large language model
I don't
instead.
think that the management brings you the slides. The company doesn't bring you the slides that can be AI generated. The management give you the safety on making the decision, right? When you hire the big company, then your goal is not to change the organization, is to just show that we hired the
absolutely
biggest one.
True. So the role of management consultants is not to give you an answer, but to be somebody to blame for when the decision that you've already made goes wrong.
We have few consultants here in the room, so just make notes. You know what is your role from now on. All right, so we get through James with this question, where not to use. So Patricia, can you close with if the company don't want to use or
I'm talking to this company and they absolutely do not want to use AI. They're in real estate, and it's because of the liability and because they have so much data and it's not connected, and the person in the middle says no. And actually last week they were saying they won't even touch AI for a couple of years. They also have a lot of money, so interesting, but it's a liability.
And what was your recommendation?
What was the question?
In this case, when you have this kind of situation, what is your recommendation?
I mean, basically he was saying their data is a junk. So yeah, get working on that and see how AI can help you internally. But I think they're not probably knowledgeable to understand how it could help them. So maybe they could hire a language model. Large language model.
Which is nicer than just leave company, which was just mentioned before. All right, keeping the time, the eye on time. So let's leave this AI for a second, maybe, and let's go back to this innovation. And one of the things that comes in the Agile world like 2 years ago was like Agile is dead. So thinking about the product perspective, so you think about like Agile is a product. Should we innovate, so iterate on this one, make it better? Should we
Oh, Simon, that's you.
Completely destroy this one?
He
And or the third option is like a reinvent this one from the scratch.
So you're asking me, is Agile dead?
If Agile is a product, what should we do with this one?
Well, when we were saying that, it goes back to practices. If you go back to, 25 years ago, it was 1999, 2000 Agile Manifesto. It was a concept back there, and then we went through the process of emerging, converging, accepted, so that all that's happening is this methodology or set of practices for how to deal with a constantly changing environment. It's just evolved. And of course, along the way, we've come up with various metrics which make no sense at all, and we've got to learn to get rid of them. There needs to be a bit of rewilding, I would say, to the Agile methodology. But it's far from dead as far as I'm concerned.
Go ahead.
Is plan-driven dead? Agile was supposed to be killing plan-driven, let's remember. And all of our governments are still using plan-driven to deliver all of their projects highly over budget and highly over time.
Except in 2020, I think that the plan-driven was pretty, at least hit by an accident in 2020 in March.
I very much subscribe to Simon's comment. I think Agile is maturing. I don't think it's dead, and I think it will continue to mature for many years to come. For me, it's more about how it is used than trying to shoehorn it into using it in a way that it shouldn't be used for in the first place, which is also very similar to what Simon said at the beginning. Simon says. You see what I've done there?
That's going to be a new name for your new tool.
Attend his talk next. It should be fun. I mean, I agree with both these gentlemen, and I'm good friends with Ken Schwaber, and one of the things that he says he regrets when he was, I don't want to say thinking about Scrum, but one of the things that he regret not putting in earlier was a notion of metrics and measurement. Because he said, and this is the whole thing about evidence-based management, is how do we actually know that it's working? how do we know that works better than plan-driven development? What is the proof? Because people will always fall back on control when things get tough. So that was the one thing that he really wished that people would get good at, because when you're really doing that, it's hard. And to prove that it justifies the investment that you make in it.
That's a really good point. But of course, the problem with measurements is measurement, because we always manipulate and change them, or groups do, to create advantage, particularly when you start rewarding. So things like velocity is great, except for when people start comparing velocity between teams without understanding context. Or my pet favorite is lines of code.
Yeah, not those metrics.
Whoever came up with that is such a... I mean, it's great in an AI world, because this stuff will create you 30,000 lines of completely useless code or maybe useful code in seconds. But yeah, we've got to do some refinement on metrics. But
if anything, it's more important than now, because we need empiricism more than ever, especially with what AI can do. And I was talking about it this morning. We used to just say, oh, we're running in whatever direction, and now we can just do it really fast without any validation. So that the pure concepts of it is so important.
All right, checking if there's nothing to add, because I'm running out of the time. So we're going to close with these ones. Ladies, gentlemen, James Hartley, Patricia Kong, and Simon Wardley.